It took a while, but UConn finally put Butler away as the Huskies get back to their winning ways. I'll recap. This is Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday night and welcome back to another post-game episode of Locked On UConn. I am Matt Schonvisky, a two-time graduate, 10-year credential media member and host of the only daily UConn sports podcast, Locked On UConn, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and thank you for making this your first listen each and every single day. On today's show, UConn took down Butler tonight, and it took a full 40 minutes to do so. What went right? What went wrong? We know Dan Hurley was frustrated at the half. Then, Solo Ball had another great shooting night, leading the way in scoring. We'll talk about his performance tonight. And finally, Braylon Mullins returned home and had a number of friends and family in attendance. How did he perform back in the state of Indiana? But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. So UConn back in action, coming off of Friday night's loss at St. John's, and it didn't go according to plan. I don't think Dan Hurley liked the way the team came out. They certainly let Butler hang around way too long. Way too long. At the half, it was a 3-point game. Could have been tied. Could have been down a few points. UConn was up 3. And the issues that plagued UConn against St. John's reared their ugly head again tonight against Butler on the road. Turnovers, missed free throws, giving up offensive boards, fouling on free throw misses when Butler's at the line, giving Butler extra possessions. And then we also got some laziness with the ball. Again. So it wasn't a great performance by UConn. And it wasn't a great second half either. Until late. When UConn went on a nice scoring run, led by Solo Ball, who led the way in scoring. He had 24 points, 8 of 14, 6 of 12 from 3. We'll talk more about him in our second segment. Tarris Reed at 16 points, 6 of 10 from the field, 4 of 5 from the free throw line. Overall, 16, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 blocks. Great game by Tarris Reed. Braylon Mullins had 15, 5 rebounds. Silas Demery had 11. Those are your double-figure scores. Caravan sat a lot of the first half because he had a couple fouls. Didn't commit a foul the rest of the way. Had 6 points. Had a nice little runner when things were looking a little shady there. Had a runner there in the second half to get UConn moving. It was the second bucket of the game. Off the bench, Jaden Ross had a 3. Malachi Smith had a 3. Eric Riba had 2 points. Jones Stewart didn't score. Bench really wasn't a factor tonight. It was all about your starters. UConn committed only 8 turnovers, your season average heading into St. John's game. But there were still moments where they were careless. There were some moments where, hey, when Butler pressed late, UConn had to call timeout. The game wasn't a smooth game. It wasn't a game where I look back on and say, hey, this was a nice recovery off of St. John's. In fact, Dan Hurley at the halftime interview went in and said, we're just committing turnovers of stupidity. That's a direct quote from Dan Hurley. Clearly irked, clearly upset with how the game was going. Not happy with the Huskies' performance. And in the huddle, and one of the breaks, you could see he was very visibly upset. And it really wasn't until late second half where UConn finally got it rolling. And put some distance between themselves. I think it was a 4-point game. 64-60, I want to say. And UConn went on that nice run. Sparked by Solo Ball's 3. And then the Huskies had some nice ball movement there. And were able to put some distance between themselves. Excuse me, it was 64-62. With 6:49 to go. And then UConn promptly went on a 10-0 run. And that was your game. But that was with 6:49 to go in the second half. Wasn't a great look on the road at a team that was 4-9 in the Big East and 13-11 overall. But in the end, UConn improves to 23-2, 13-1 in conference. And you had some inside game, you had some outside game. Everyone contributed. Everyone had a role. Everyone played their part. And Solo Ball, man, goodness gracious. 6 threes on the night. Filled it up, and we're going to talk about him in the next segment. But heading into this game, UConn dropped to number 6 in the nation off the loss to St. John's. And there's more and more skepticism creeping in about this team, how UConn's not the top tier any longer, how Michigan and a few others are a step above what UConn can do this season and what the expectation is. And UConn's now in the category like a Duke. Now, that's what we were told on the broadcast last night. Second tier. Still competitive, but second tier. I disagree still. Yes, they're going through some struggles, but I think this team, top notch, is better than any team in the nation. I do. I really do. And if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't say it. But it took them more than a half. It took them a full half and then half of the second half to get back to playing with rhythm, sharing the ball. UConn had 22 assists. They did share the rock last night. Butler had 21. What I didn't like defensively is Butler was able to get layups. They were able to consistently get dunks. They were consistently moving the ball, getting open threes. And you could see a visibly frustrated bench throughout the entire first half and into the second. Butler shot 46% from the field, 38% from three. UConn just so happened to hit 51%, 42% from three. But it wasn't a great night defensively. They only forced 8 turnovers. They did out-rebound Butler by 7. But too many layups, too many dunks, too many open threes can lead to a game like we saw last night. And in a game like you saw last night, you need to ensure you're scoring the rock. And that's exactly what the Huskies got from Solo Ball, and we'll talk about him after the break. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping for the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. If I were hiring, I wouldn't just want someone who can help. I'd want someone with real experience who can jump right in. That's what I like about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. No more headaches of training on the job because the candidate that you hired doesn't have the right experience. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, Companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. Speed skating races decided by inches. Hockey games that feel different right from the opening faceoff. Every niche event becomes must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. So if you are watching the Milan Cortina Olympics, check out FanDuel. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Back in on this post-game edition of Locked On UConn, and we are switching gears and talking about Solo Ball and his 24-point performance tonight. And there's just something about playing Butler for Solo Ball. This is his second game this season. First game back in December, home game, 26 points for Solo. Tonight, 24. Averaging 25 a game against Butler this year. And he had it cooking. 6 of 12 from 3, 50%. 2 of 2 from the line. 8 of 14 overall. He did have 2 turnovers. One was one of those miscues at half court, kind of like Silas Demery against St. John's. Just dribbling around, had it his pocket picked. But I like this team offensively with Solo Ball being as aggressive as he was last night. And he consistently had open looks. He put up 12 threes. Last time he put up 12 threes, he also had 24 points against Villanova. And as Solo Ball goes, it seems so do the Huskies. Leading the way in scoring. Huskies win. I like the aggressiveness. I like him running off screens. And when Braylon Mullins had it going early on, because Mullins had 13 in the first half, it opened up opportunities for Solo. So it's guys playing off one another. Because it took a little bit. I don't think Solo had too many early. I think it was once Braylon Mullins got things going, that's when Solo started getting open looks as well. And it's part of the UConn offense, right? Multidimensional, not just one guy. This game kind of went in stages. It was Mullins early, and it was Tarris Reed and Solo Ball rest of the way. And then where needed, Demery stepped in. And then Caravan really wasn't much of a factor until they needed a little runner there in the second half. But offensively, I really like this UConn team. When Solo Ball is getting looks, Solo Ball is getting open looks. That means other things are working. That means he's going to get his opportunities. And that means shots are going up. And his aggressiveness usually leads to success offensively for UConn. Now, you got to take care of the ball. I would like to see you get some more opportunities at the rim. Because him at the line is a good thing. But there was just something off overall with the rest of the team. But Solo Ball, huge bright spot. Huge bright spot. And then the last 5, 6, 7 minutes, I liked what I saw from the UConn offense and defense, and they finally put it all together and got on one of their nice little runs. So that was solo ball on Wednesday night. On the other side, we're going to be talking Braylon Mullins, who returned home to the state of Indiana in front of a number of friends and family, including his twin younger brothers. We'll talk about that after the break.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Dawn Staley and South Carolina remain on top of the SEC standings after handing Tennessee their worst defeat in program history with a final score of 93-40. In the 43-point win, South Carolina shot 69% from the field. Tessa Johnson had a perfect shooting night, scoring 24 points, shooting 4 for 4 from the floor, including 2 threes, and made all 4 of her free throws. And UCLA remains undefeated in Big Ten play, topping Michigan 69-66 as Player of the Year contender Lauren Betts put up a double-double, scoring 16 points, collecting 16 rebounds, and adding 5 assists and 3 blocks. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Back in on this final segment of a post-game edition of Locked On UConn, and we're switching gears to Braylon Mullins and what he brought to the table on Wednesday night, back home in the state of Indiana in front of, I think they said, 200 friends and family. So a large contingent there to see Braylon Mullins in action. He delivered, right? Came out of the gate with 13 points in that first half. Hitting threes, hitting some mid-range jumpers, and was able to put points on the board when UConn needed it. Overall, however, after his hot start, he only had 2 points the rest of the way. He finished 6 of 15 from the field for 15 points. So he wasn't his usual efficient self throughout the rest of the game. He had 4 fouls. He was 3 of 9 from 3. He had 5 rebounds, 1 assist, did not turn it over, had 1 steal, 2 blocks. So you got a little of everything from Braylon yesterday in 34 minutes of play. He had hot streak early. They went kind of cold. And that's when solo ball came on the scene and really put the scoring on for UConn. And what has Braylon Mullins meant to this team? I think you saw it yesterday. That even when he's not scoring nonstop, even when he's missing shots, even when he's not his usual efficient self, when he's shooting 38% from the field, he can still get others involved because of the fear he puts into opposing defenses. So he had the great start. And that opened things up, like we just talked about with Solo. Braylon Mullins opens things up for other guys on this team. Because when he gets that stroke going, the focal point of opposing defenses comes down onto him. Right? And that's why you see open looks for Solo. That's why you see open looks at times for Silas. That's why you see Tarris Reed able to go to work down on the block. Listen, this stat line for Tarris Reed, 16 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 blocks. He's getting one-on-one matchups down low because if you go down and double Tarris Reed on the block, what's going to happen? You're going to find Braylon Mullins wide open. You're going to find Solo Ball wide open. You're going to find Silas Demery wide open. You're going to find Alex Caravan wide open. Double at your own risk, and nobody does. Because UConn is lethal offensively. Lethal. So when UConn drops to 6 nationally earlier this week, I looked at those rankings and I had a little bit of a smile. Behind Iowa State, behind Houston, Duke I can see, just ahead of Nebraska. UConn's better than the 6th. Too far of a drop for one loss against the number 17 team in the nation. This is my opinion, obviously. But 22-2, second most wins nationally. Only 2 losses to number 17 and number 1. And yet UConn is number 6. Duke has lost to Texas Tech and UNC, both ranked teams. Iowa State has lost to Kansas on the road and has lost at Cincinnati by 9. And they got blown out by Kansas by 21. Wasn't even a close game. And, oh, by the way, they just lost to TCU on Tuesday by 7. So we know UConn's going to be moving back into the top 5 come next week's polls. The fact that they were out of the top 5 because they lost to a ranked St. John's team in a game that was very competitive. It was a battle. UConn didn't get blown out. I think it speaks to the, I don't know if it's a bad perception of this UConn team. I'm not understanding why UConn dropped out of the top 5. I think it's, and the coaches didn't drop them out of the top 5. The coaches kept UConn above Duke, who's number 4 in the AP. So the top 5 in the AP is Arizona, Michigan, Houston, Duke, Iowa State. Top 5 in the coaches, Arizona, Michigan, Houston, Iowa State, UConn. Iowa State lost to TCU. They're going to be dropping, of course. You got a Kansas team ranked 9th nationally with 5 losses. The losses are to UNC, Duke, UConn, obviously, UCF, and West Virginia. And you're a top 10 team? Yet UConn's lost 2 games and they're only 3 spots ahead of Kansas? Something doesn't make sense to me when it comes to the perception of these teams on a national scale. Maybe it's because UConn's in the Big East. Maybe it's because Kansas has this aura around them that, hey, with 5 losses, they should be a top 10 team. I'm not following. So I'm very interested to see the rankings as they come out next week. And we're going to keep an eye on the rankings going forward from here on out, because these rankings will play into seeding in the NCAA tournament, which to me, it's obviously very important. Last year, UConn ran into the eventual national champion in the second round and ultimately played them better than anybody else until the championship game. If they could have rebounded last year, Florida's not the national champion because UConn would have won that game. I think there's I don't want to call it a disrespect, but it's a lack of understanding of what UConn has been doing and what UConn is, and at full strength and a healthy UConn, what they look like and what they're capable of. I don't understand why they're 6th. So we got on a little tangent here because we started the segment talking about Braylon Mullins and then we got into rankings. Something to keep an eye on because this has an impact, obviously, when we get into the NCAA tournament. And how UConn is viewed during these rankings is how UConn's going to be viewed when the committee is setting up seeding. So as of now, UConn's a 2 seed. Of course. I don't think anybody is surprised about that. I think eventually you're going to see UConn maybe a 1 seed out west. That's my prediction. I think UConn will be in the top 4 in both polls. I think UConn will run through the rest of their schedule here. And I think we're going to have an opportunity to be the 1 seed out west. I don't know if it's going to be in the East. Maybe it's the Midwest. Maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe they keep Arizona out west because, hey, they're undefeated, obviously. But historically, when UConn hasn't been the top team, UConn's been put somewhere else out of the East. We'll see how it looks this year. It's going to be an interesting seeding as we get closer and closer to the NCAA tournament. And we're already, listen, I can't believe it. It's mid-February already. We're less than a month away from March. So we're moving the calendar from February to UConn, right? Because UConn equals March. We'll talk more about seeding and rankings as we move forward on the show. Later today, you will see a full post-game show also on the women's side because they took down Creighton last night. They didn't start great, but they did. Boy, did they finish. And we will be talking about that. But for today, that wraps up today's post-game show. As we close, please hit the like and subscribe button, and thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On UConn. If you are an everydayer and never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more, all built for our most loyal fans. Visit LockedOnPodcast.com/everydayerclub for more information. As we close the week, or as we close this post-game edition, as mentioned, keep an eye out for a post-game on the women's win over Creighton as well. And as always, go Huskies!